Content creation in the sports and athlete space is a big deal nowadays, but what should you be focusing on? I recently ran a little poll on Twitter to cover a few aspects of this with my sporting audience, and this is what came back. Though hardly an authoritative final word on the subject, what was interesting was that the kind of pose pretty imagery, which is a tick box approach used by many, only got 1.7% of the votes, whereas on the other side of the spectrum, the clear winner in sentiment towards what was the most appealing with athlete content was the behind the scenes content. But what is behind the scenes content essentially, and what makes it so sought after by the fans? Well, the example of the Netflix show Drive to Survive is the natural go-to reference to start answering this question. Not only did it reinvigorate the sport for those already connected to it, but it brought a whole new audience with it that would ordinarily not have found the sport interesting or relevant enough. And that was the plan for the show, particularly growing the sport in the lucrative American market, where F1 now has 3 races in the calendar after the addition of Miami and Las Vegas since the release of the TV show. The stories of the drivers became bigger than the stories of the races, especially in the first season where they focused on the middle to back of the grid. It gave the sport a soul, a personality, and that's what fans really want nowadays. Netflix has since applied that same formula to tennis and golf, with spin-off shows doing the same unique behind-the-scenes approach to those two sports with Breakpoint and Full Swing. The UFC are always at the forefront of the game when it comes to content, and their embedded YouTube series during each week of the UFC number events have been popular for years. It has become part of what Fight Week is about, showcasing the events that lead to the Octagon Walk. Fans then only get to watch the fight beamed live on the Saturday night. The whole event starts with the first embedded episode that Monday in the lead-up. Actually, it goes back to the previous weekend when the Countdown show gets released, which starts to frame the matchups and the backstories of all the fighters involved. Recently, Flow Grappling signed a big deal with Jiu-Jitsu superstar Gordon Ryan. Part of that now sees an all-access series of content around him and his life in and around of training. It's hugely interesting to the fans of Jiu-Jitsu and Gordon Ryan, but also grows the sport in general to people like me who didn't know much about it prior to the connection points of the Gordon Ryan content. Chasing the Sun was an incredible production as it got fans of the Springbok rugby team closer to their stars than ever before, and it elevated their Rugby World Cup win to new heights and emotional importance. This is the new normal of sports because it has to be. Sport is competing with everything that our eyeballs are attracted to now. In the past, it didn't have to compete against too much, but anyone out there can now make video content and make good video content thanks to amazing editing software and platforms like TikTok and YouTube. So sport has to provide the behind the scenes attractions in order to compete with big money reality TV productions, the endless offerings on Netflix, and to stay relevant against online creators and influencers who create so many engaging connection points with their audiences. This may all seem like quite a lot to take in, and the natural question is, how do you as an athlete get amongst this? How do you stand out without a camera crew, a content creation background, or any real experience in front of the camera, and with little to no audience in the grander scheme of things? It is incredibly daunting, and certainly not something a lot of athletes feel comfortable with. And in all honesty, it absolutely isn't for everyone. And that's why you need to be realistic about this. Sure, it would be great to be as good at this stuff as you are physically performing in your sport, but just like performing in your sport, it's going to take a little work and a fair amount of guidance. So join us in part 2 of this video, where we break down how to approach the behind the scenes content creation for athletes, right here on the MatchKit Learning Center.